Ecosystems bring every element of ecology together, and today we will learn how to label populations of an ecosystem.
The trophic feeding interactions of each population can be visually mapped out onto a food web, which connects predator to prey with arrows that point in the direction of energy flow. Here is an example of a typical food web. In the food web, we can tell that different organisms are related to each other through their dependence on other organisms for food. Food webs demonstrate the flow of energy from one species to another, starting from the energy of inorganic molecules that is captured by primary producers to build chemical bonds and to form organic matter through photosynthesis. In our example, the plant acts as a primary producer and uses energy gained from the sun to undergo photosynthesis and grow. Similar to how a primary producer gains its energy from outside sources, consumers get their energy from consuming the organic matter. Particularly, primary consumers get their energy from eating primary producers. An example of primary consumers in this food web is the butterfly gaining energy by eating the plants. Secondary consumers will get their energy from eating primary consumers, and such a pattern continues up the trophic levels. An example of secondary consumers here is the lizard eating the butterfly. Tertiary and quaternary consumers are typically at the top of the food chain and get their energy from eating primary and secondary consumers. There are other types of consumers involved in this food web as well. Detritivores consume dead organic matter and break this matter down into smaller molecules. In food webs, detritivores are important because they return important materials such as carbon back into the environment. Earthworms are an example of detritivores because they consume dead organic matter.
Primary producers and the consumers come together to create a representation of what eats what in an ecological community. The trophic levels of a food web can be summarized by autotrophs and heterotrophs, where autotrophs are the producers and heterotrophs are the consumers.
Now it's time to witness Worthy's knowledge in real life. Join us as we go through the campus of Georgia Tech to observe the food webs in action. Let's go! The easiest thing to spot here on campus are the trees, which are typical primary producers on campus. Primary producers produce biomass from inorganic compounds, which means they are photosynthetically active organisms, just like this tree. Over here we have a squirrel, which is a typical primary consumer. Remember, a primary consumer is the organism that feeds some primary producers, like green plants or other autotrophic organisms.
Lastly, we have the rare and a dangerous secondary consumer. Don't get too close, you may lose a limb. Basically, any animal that preys on a primary consumer falls under this category.
So even here in Georgia Tech, we have our own food webs and trophic interactions in the tech ecosystem. You can even think of the whole planet as a one huge ecosystem known as a biosphere. Just keep in mind that energy flows in and out of the systems openly, but matter cycles within the system. That's a circle of life. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope you learn a lot about food webs.